How do we quarantine a new plant? I've introduced dozens of plants to my indoor oasis over the past few years without any bad surprises. In this episode, I will show you how to quarantine a new plant and what to do when unwelcome guests are discovered. Welcome to Oasis in a Pot. First, if you're wondering why we should always isolate a new plant, please watch my plant horror story episode for an explanation. Now, how should you quarantine a new plant? I'll use my Monstera as an example. As soon as I brought the new plant home last summer, I put it directly in the bathtub and sprayed neem oil on it. I made my neem oil spray with a teaspoon of neem oil, a quarter teaspoon of dish soap, and a liter of water. The goal is to kill any hidden pests on the plant. If you don't have a bathtub, you can also do this in an area far away from your existing plants. Repeat the spray routine weekly until the quarantine ends. After the initial neem oil spray, I started searching for a quarantine spot. There are two factors to consider: lighting and distance. Let's talk about lighting first. All plants need sunlight, although some need more and some less. It's important to know your plant's light requirements and identify spots in your home that meet these requirements. For example, although my new Monstera performs best in bright, indirect light, it can also tolerate low light levels. So a part of my apartment with natural light is suitable for plant isolation. The next factor is distance. Ideally, I should isolate my new plant in a separate room. However, only my living room has windows in my apartment. So my only choice is to place the new plant as far as possible from the window area, where my existing plants sit. In my experience, 15 feet is a safe distance since pests like mealybugs and spider mites can't crawl far. Keep in mind that the further away we are from the window, the less natural light we get. So we have to balance the plant's light requirements with its quarantine distance. If your home doesn't have a safe quarantine space, there are a few other ideas. One idea is to isolate your plant in a closet with supplementary light. Another idea is to isolate it in a bag or a clear bin. I haven't tried any of these ideas though. If anyone has, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I always quarantine a new plant for at least 2 weeks. That's because pests such as mealybugs eggs hatch in 7 to 10 days. So if there are hidden bugs eggs on the plant, they will hatch during the 2-week window. The weekly neem oil spray is expected to kill most of them, if not all. Also, as the bugs grow during this time, they become more noticeable. Of course, the longer you isolate your plant, the more certain you are that your plant is bug-free. As long as your quarantine spot has sufficient light, you can leave your plant there for a long time. However, many of us don't have such luxury. The isolating plant often sits in a place with little light, so we must balance the quarantine time with the plant's stress. For example, I placed my Monstera about 25 feet away from the window. That's a spot with low light. The plant won't be happy here. At the end of the 2-week quarantine, I checked for any bugs one last time and then repotted the plant. I usually repot after quarantine rather than immediately upon bringing the plant home to avoid adding transplant shock to the quarantine stress. After that, I started moving the plant to its permanent spot. This process took a couple weeks. Each week, I moved the plant a bit closer to its final destination, so it could gradually adapt to the higher light environment. Meanwhile, I kept monitoring the plant's health and looking for any potential bugs. What if you discovered any bugs? This unfortunate incident happened to my parlor palm last year. At the end of its 2-week quarantine, I discovered many small bugs in the plant saucer. Most of them were dead, but a few were still crawling. To this day, I still can't identify these bugs. They look like a smaller version of fruit flies. Immediately, I moved the plant to another room, which is much darker. However, given the increased risk of pest spread, my highest priority shifted to protecting my existing plants. Apart from moving the plant, I also alternated between insecticidal soap and neem oil spray on a weekly basis. If I used the neem oil this week, I would use insecticidal soap the following week. It took an extra month until I no longer saw any bugs in the plant saucer. Then, I observed the plant for 3 more weeks. Because the plant received many rounds of pesticide sprays and endured little light for 9 weeks, it lost half of its foliage, although it managed to survive. It's worth noting that some pests, such as mealybugs, can be incredibly difficult to eliminate, especially in cases of severe infestations. Often, repeated treatments are necessary, which can be time-consuming and labor-intensive. In such situations, it may be more practical to discard heavily infested plants rather than attempting treatment. Finally, I'd like to offer some tips to make your plant quarantine process easier. First, think about your quarantine spot before purchasing a new plant. Do you have a quarantine spot at your home that meets the plant's minimum light requirement for a few weeks? Second, choose a smaller plant over a larger one. A smaller plant is less likely to be infected by pests because it has less foliage for them to hide. Also, a smaller plant is easier to quarantine. It requires less space to isolate, and you spend less effort checking and spraying it. That concludes this episode of how to isolate your plant. The whole process requires careful planning, vigilance, and a bit of hard work. Sometimes you even get a bad surprise. But at the end of this process, you will be glad all of your plants remain bug-free. If you find my advice helpful, please subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Until then, good luck with your new plants.